Hi, folks. It is Friday, late afternoon, here in New York City, and I wanted to talk to you. I originally was going to talk to you about one thing that it really has to do with the rule of law, but something else happened today, as you're all aware, which is President Zelenskyy from Ukraine came from his war-torn country, which had been invaded 3 years ago by Russia. And to be clear, of course, any sane person knows that they were invaded in an unprovoked attack. They didn't invade themselves, as President Trump has said. And there was a meeting in the White House that was it was such a setup and was so grossly immature, and it is just a horrendous example of what America has become on the international stage, which is really a laughingstock, except if you're Russia. It is hard to imagine President Trump doing anything that would make it clearer that he is doing Vladimir Putin's bidding, which is just remarkable when that is the aggressor in a war. And in America and across the world, there are so few big public examples of heroes. There obviously are day-to-day heroes in all way, shape, and form that we don't see. But on the sort of national and international stage, there are very few heroes. And to me, President Zelensky is one of them. Somebody who really rose to the occasion, has put his life on the line for his country, and has had to overcome enormous odds, both from within his country, from Russia, in terms of speaking and mobilizing international support. He is certainly a hero of mine. On the national stage, I've spoken about that's the way I feel about Dr. Fauci and what we owe him as a country, not just for what he did during the most recent pandemic, but for his career. The idea that he would show up as the president of a foreign country that had been attacked, the biggest sort of land war attack since World War II, by Russia in Europe, and uh, any uh, any civilized country has to condemn this. And the idea that we would treat him that way, that we would be siding with Russia and other authoritarian states in the United Nations without supporting Ukraine this week, is a complete disgrace. But also, as I have said this week, actually just yesterday, this is not something where you have to sort of divine, gee, what do I think is really going on? Is this really going to be as bad as they say? People are just being chicken littles and saying the sky's falling when it's not. What you saw today in the Oval Office is a classic example. And then, of course, it was no matter what President Zelensky did, you see the repercussions, because this was just a setup to make him look bad. And then you had our president and vice president in the most immature, belittling way, and saying that, have you even said thank you? I mean, this is somebody who we should be thanking for setting an example for all of us in terms of his fight for democracy. And instead, we're treating him at the victim, as if he should be another extortion victim of ours. Remember, this is the president that President Zelensky, who has already been the subject of Donald Trump's extortion scheme when he was withholding military aid in order to get President Zelensky to open up a bogus criminal investigation into the Bidens. So that's sort of the backdrop. And now you have President Trump treating this as is entirely transactional. How much money can I get from Ukraine without actually even promising security or anything else to him? And this is a victim, and he's doubling down on it as if that we're going to have mercenary armies again. And this is where it's so short-sighted because the reason America is a sort of shining beacon in the world, not just sort of morally, but it's also why it's financially so successful, is because of the rule of law. If you are any company, just to put it on financial terms, that wants to do business somewhere, you want to be in a rule of law country. So it's everyone isn't just constantly having to be bribed and be extorted. That is why you prefer to do business in countries that have a functioning legal system, and that is clearly not what Donald Trump wants. So anyway, this is a bit of a not what I was intending to talk about, but it does relate what I did want to talk about, which was something that I saw go on this week that I think has gotten less attention, but is of real significance in my community, which is the legal community, and I think is also extremely emblematic of the end of the rule of law that Donald Trump is, I think, trying to promulgate. One of the things he did is he vilified a law firm, a very well-known, respected law firm called Covington and Burling. And what was the sin that caused Donald Trump to say that the people there are not going to have government contracts anymore, and the people representing uh, certain people and who former government people are no longer going to have security clearance. So he was like, I'm pulling security clearance and I'm pulling any government contracts from Covington and Burling. But what's the sin? What is it that they did that's so bad? Are they engaged in criminal conduct? Are they in some way doing something unethical or immoral? No. Their sin is that they are representing Jack Smith. They are acting as defense lawyers for somebody. That is something that you would think Donald Trump would understand very well, having been represented by numerous defense lawyers over the past 4 years in cases that where he has actually been convicted by a jury. He has been represented in civil cases where he has lost repeatedly. So he, you would think, would have some understanding that in our system, that it is important for both sides to have skilled counsel, people who represent plaintiffs and defendants in the criminal justice system. It's actually a constitutional right to have counsel and to have effective counsel. And Donald Trump has had the benefit of that as a defendant. The idea that you would denigrate a firm for doing something that is honorable, which is being defense counsel. And I am somebody who thinks everyone obviously is entitled to a defense and everyone should have really good counsel. One of the things that I thought was great in the Manhattan District Attorney criminal case, regardless of which way it came out, is that you really saw the legal system at its best. There was a really terrific judge, there were terrific prosecutors, and there was a team together of three lawyers in the courtroom that did a very effective job for Donald Trump. And that's the way it should be. And I do not in any way hold it against any of those defense lawyers in terms of who they represent. That's what happens. I have prosecuted organized crime figures. I have prosecuted murderers, people who have engaged in all sorts of frauds, extortions, people who were engaging in fraud at Enron, engaged in sort of environmental fraud at Volkswagen, a whole range of people who who have engaged in really heinous acts. And you know what? Regardless of what they're accused of, they're entitled to defense counsel, and they should have great defense counsel. I've also been, most people know me as a prosecutor, but I've been a defense lawyer for 10 years. And so I've seen that role up close and personal because I've inhabited it. And I've also seen it. And when I've been a prosecutor and dealt with very good and reputable defense counsel. The idea that the president of the United States is targeting Covington for representing somebody and because you don't like the person they're representing is so despicable, and it so misunderstands what our criminal justice system and legal system is, as Donald Trump knows well. And the point of this is, once again, not acting out of principle. It is acting out of fear and sort of might makes right, which is I want law firms to think and lawyers to think twice in the same way that I want members of Congress to think twice, and I want people at the Department of Justice to think twice. I want Zelenskyy to think twice before they cross me, even if what I'm doing is extortionist, and even if what they are doing is staying well within their rights. And if you want to see just how far this country has come from, go back to John Adams. Famously, John Adams, uh, former president of the United States, before he was president, took on a case that was really unpopular, which was, I believe it was 8 British soldiers who were accused of murder and I think other crimes in Boston. And he represented these people in their criminal case. This was noble. This is what the system requires, is that you have good and effective people on both sides. And that is what due process is about. That is what the rule of law is about. Notably, by the way, John Adams won with respect to most of the people and was able to show that they were acquitted, meaning that the case was not proved beyond a reasonable doubt, and was able to show that they were acting in self-defense. 2 of the defendants were convicted of, I believe it was misdemeanors at the time. So that's obviously a conviction, but it's not for murder. But that's sort of irrelevant. It doesn't really matter whether he won or lost. The idea is that somebody who it was had that kind of reputation, who went on to become president of the United States, understood that was the role that you should play. I am hopeful that at some point that the legal profession will stand up and stand behind Covington to sort of join forces, that they have an I am Spartacus moment, that they understand they have to do that. Ultimately, it is going to be for the people of the United States. It also, you would hope, would be for Republican senators who could end all of this and could say, we're not, this has gone on too far. To take it back to what I was talking about with respect to Ukraine, there at least we have seen Republicans push back. But this is what it took. It took the president of the United States siding with Russia and saying the completely false accusation that Ukraine was the aggressor. And he even called President Zelenskyy a dictator. So, that is a very high bar if it takes those kinds of statements to get members of Congress to push back. But at least it's something. But I think those are two things. What happened to President Zelenskyy today and the attack on Covington and Burling for engaging in the noble profession of defending somebody, regardless of what you think of that person. It is really notable that that is what's going on, and another sign of the deterioration of America as we know it. So, with that, have a good weekend. um, stay focused and attuned to the news as much as you can. I know there's a tendency to not want to confront what's going on. And as I've noted before, there are things for people to do. You can obviously voice your views to your local representatives, to your members of Congress. They do pay attention to that. Whatever your view is, you can make sure it is known through calls and in town halls and in writing. You also can look to see what groups are bringing lawsuits and helping people who you think should be helped. So, if they're giving aid to people in Ukraine, if they're bringing lawsuits that you think are meritorious, if they're groups that speak out on First Amendment issues, those are all things that you can find online. You can look at the legal cases and see who those groups are, and you can help volunteer, you can give financial support, but there are lots of ways, big and small, to help. And I think it's really useful because it's an outlet to, for the energy that I think is going to be needed to make sure that we have the country that we want, and that we are proud of. So with that, have a great weekend. I'll continue talking to you as things progress. Take care. Thanks for listening to this on YouTube, which I just started, and you feel free to subscribe if you like it. And if you want more from me, if you're not sick of me, you can find additional videos on my YouTube, or you can also find additional things I've written and additional comments I've made on Substack. So lots of places to find me. And of course, you can always listen to my podcast with Mary McCord called Maine Justice. And I'm a legal analyst for NBC and MSNBC. So catch me there too. Take care.